So, what I wanted to talk about today, after such a heavy topic earlier, is just a little bit lighter. Like Green Jeans is putting out there, I asked, when are you most happiest? Like, what makes you happy? And Green Jeans put out there three things: hugs, combat in most forms, as long as it's consensual. And I happen to agree with that one. And the first bite of a home cooked meal, especially after a hard day. Hell yeah. Those are extremely great things. And then I have to ask you one simple thing. How much do those cost? I think the only thing that actually has a price to it is the home cooked meal. And even that's not that much, and the idea is that what is what is it when we are sufficient? When we're content? It's not the stuff we have around us. It's generally the people, and we have all of these different things trying to tell us what we should have. And I think people chase money way too hard. Yeah, there you go. Photography, which can get expensive because, cameras are expensive, especially if you want, professional cameras. But I mean, if you're just looking at, photography from your phone, you're already paying that bill. But it's the idea that we have to have all this stuff to be happy when we really don't. I'd say, some of my happiest times in my life were when I was actually at my most simple. I didn't have, a whole bunch of video games. I didn't have a whole bunch of stuff. Like when my wife and I got together, moved into our first place together, we had a bed in the bedroom, a futon couch, a TV, and a bunch of VHSs. Ooh, yeah, exactly. And I'm not trying to shame anybody for having, saving up for that one thing that's really cool. I mean, I like my computers. I like playing on my computer. But for a long time, I didn't have that. I didn't have a nice computer. I may have grown up with computers. That's one of the things that I think a lot of people don't get. Like, I couldn't tell you how to code, but I can tell you when something's off. Like, I just have a sense for it. Like, something's wrong and it needs to be fixed rather than just being a problem with the computer. I've known people that can do that with cars, with various different things, as part of just their natural habitat. And computers are kind of part of my life. I always use them, but it has to be a desktop. I am not a fan of laptops. I'm not a fan of smartphones. I honestly think that I wish we could take them back down to being just a normal phone. Just make calls, maybe text, but that'd be the extent of it. I don't think they need to have all these specialized cameras and all these specialized apps and all this other crap. Call me a Luddite if you will. I realize that I'm in the minority there, because we have to have these things now, but we don't actually have to have them. Corporations require these things. You have to be connected to your company at all times. You have to have this at all times. Well, at my happiest, I didn't even have a cell phone. I'm not even, I think my wife and I think we had a landline at the time. And we just had, VHS tapes. We watched movies at home, stuff that we had watched before or went out and rented a movie. And people really don't do that anymore. I mean, when was the last time you rented a movie even through Amazon or rented it through YouTube, which I guess you can? When was the last time you even did that? You just buy it. But then again, you're not really buying because purchasing isn't purchasing. We're losing control to things that we think we need. And I think that's a big kind of problem. I think it's a big problem that we're losing control over what we want. I mean, that professional camera is a great thing. You have control over that. The one in your phone, I mean, we're getting to a point where they're going to be able to just, you take a picture and they're going to censor it. I put a video on the Discord that there's evidence that YouTube is AI upscaling shorts. Like they're actually making shorts videos look more AI. Not that these creators put AI in them, but these shorts videos are looking more and more AI. And I get it. It's probably there for upscaling. It's probably to save data, transfer power, blah, 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 all of this stuff. I get that that's what they're saying they're doing, but it also seems to me kind of nefarious because how are you supposed to tell the difference between AI and not AI when AI is upscaling everything? When AI is doing that kind of stuff, how are we supposed to learn to tell the difference? We're losing control. And so I want to, stress that we're not. I know I just said all of that, said we're losing control, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, we're not. Because all of these things we're losing control of aren't our world. I mean, two of the answers here match: hugs. AI is never going to take that away. It can't. A home cooked meal, AI can't take that away. I mean, we all know when we're eating something not home cooked versus a home cooked meal. We know. I mean, there's just something more about it. And some people, oh, it's not as consistent. Well, yeah, that's true. Like when I cut the vegetables for what I'm cooking, I make sure, and even sometimes the meat, I make sure it's inconsistent cuts. It's not this machine, perfect slice. I don't even try. I try to vary the size so that each mouthful is slightly different ratio of the food, so that each bite is slightly different. Yes, it's all still the same meal with the same seasoning and everything like that, but the ratio of what you're putting in your mouth is different. Just little things like that is what I do. And yeah, that's why I will never consider myself a professional cook, because that's just not me. I want the variation. That's how I like to eat. I like it being slightly different every time. I don't like eating the same thing over and over and over again. And I don't think many people do. I mean, there are some, they want their specific meal and that's it. But I think that we need to learn that what we sit here and scream cry about losing control of is literally nothing. It's all digital. We're not losing control of anything. We're losing control of what we're told we should have. I mean, if purchasing isn't buying, stop purchasing. I mean, if you're not going to own what you want, like friggin' Volkswagen in one of their electric model cars somewhere, I don't think it's actually in the US, are literally restricting the quote unquote horsepower of their electric vehicle. But you can subscribe to have that bump. Like you can subscribe to a pay to get your speeds increased or your torque increased. I'm not exactly sure what it translates to, but basically, to make your car more sporty, you can subscribe to something and pay so that you actually get to use the car you purchased. BMW tried this with heated seats and steering wheel. I don't think that went over too well because the tech was already in the car. They shipped the car with it already involved, but you had to subscribe to get it. And I haven't heard anything more about that after, the huge backlash they got from that. Of course, BMW sales are been down a lot. So when I say that, we're losing control of the things they want us to have. They can't stop us from going to a used bookstore and buying our tabletop RPG books that we want to play. It doesn't matter how many they release. You can always find old copies somewhere. Or even online, you can find copies and print it out and bind it yourself. There's a great place called Drive Through RPG, a website where you can buy old books that have been out of print, that they bought up the rights to publish so that you can just buy the publishing or buy the PDF. And if I remember right, they even do print on demand. Now, is it perfect? No. Is it the old school binding? Is it a first run? No. But does it really matter to you if you're actually just playing the game, if you're not just a collector of the game? And I think that's kind of the problem is that we've turned so many things into collections, into collectible memorabilia, that people are afraid to experience the art for the art. I mean, how many people buy comic books and instantly have them graded and, they just seal them up and put them on a shelf? When was the last time they read a comic book? Actually enjoyed it for its enjoyment? It's just like with the Pokemon cards and the Magic the Gathering cards. People aren't buying them to experience the joy of the game. And even more so, the companies that produce these are now producing them not for the joy of the game, not for people to actually enjoy their art form, but to sell pieces of cardboard at higher than market value. And that's kind of dystopian when you start looking at it. So take back control of the things that you want. I mean, consensual combat, I'm all for. Been years. I'd be probably pretty sour at it, but it's been many years since I sparred. But I'm willing to go back to it because it makes me happy, not hurting someone, but just the physical competition. I cook a home cooked meal almost every day. Spending time with my close friends, I don't get to do that as much as I'd like. My friends are all over hell and gone now. And I think that's one of the hazards of living in the day and age we live now. It used to be you moved to a new place, you found new friends. You got to know your neighbors, or you found some place where you could go find people like you. And now we can't do that. It's not as free to just talk to someone. What's up, dormants? We're afraid to get in touch in controlled circumstances with the stranger. Which, don't get me wrong, that's actually kind of a good thing in some cases, but not everybody is out to get you. Not everybody is out to do bad things. Well, thank you. Thank you for stopping by. I'm just yapping about what makes people happy. And that we need to understand that no matter what we lose in our life, control over what makes us happy, we always have control over. Because there's so much that especially once you start getting older, you realize that the trappings, the computer, the big house, the car, those are just things. They're just there to get you from place to place. The things that really make you happy, you never lose control over. Hugs, home cooked meals. You can always do these things. Yeah, when groceries get more and more expensive, you might have less of a home cooked meal per meal, but you're still getting it. And in fact, the more groceries get expensive, more things get expensive, the more likely you are to have a home cooked meal. And I mean, when I was growing up, going out to eat was maybe once a month. Maybe. It was always an event. It was always something special. And I mean, COVID really ruined that. COVID destroyed people's want to get around other people. Like, we are afraid to be near other people. And it also loosened the inhibition some people have about being in public, about being, where others are. We're afraid. There's this underlying fear that we were taught to have. And while I understand the COVID restrictions, because I do understand how viruses work, I also understand how much more they made of it than they really should have. Once you get a handle on the virus and have a treatment protocol, that's all you really needed to do. Believe whichever way you want about vaccinations. I can see both sides of, especially the COVID vaccinations. But, I got my one shot, but I never went for any boosters. Didn't see the point, because that's not how viruses work. I mean, that's just simple science. But not to be, not to get off on a tangent. Sorry. What I'm trying to say is that I have something in my head that I call the sufficiency protocol, or the sufficiency doctrine, is having just enough to make you happy. Just enough interaction with people, just enough what makes you happy. And anything outside of that, anything more than that, it's just kind of useless. It's like, a billionaire with, a few $100 million in the bank. It's not doing him any good. Like, oh, it's earning interest. Well, is it? Are you ever going to use that interest? I mean, you're already a billionaire. You have a good one, Normans. Thank you for stopping in. Hope you could take at least something from this. It doesn't matter to me, the billionaire itself. I don't care. I'm not saying that wealth is bad, but I'm saying that the consistent seeking of it is probably one of the most detrimental things that we run into. The difficulties of how getting into the race for having the hot car or something like that. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you always wanted a certain car, whatever car that may be, I mean, maybe it's a Bugatti. I mean, you have fun earning the money for that one. But I'm not going to shame you for it if that's like your goal, if that's something you want to do. We all have something like that, which, much like gossip with the one professional camera, saved up over 3 years to get it. I can applaud that, because the price of that item, not just in the cash value, but in what you sacrificed over that 3 years to pay for. The little things. You earned that camera. But when you make a certain amount of money, you stop earning that money, and it's just given to you. Whether it's just because it's sitting in an account and now you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars just on interest alone. You never actually have to touch the principal because you're making all that interest. Which, I mean, again, I'm not shaming anybody for. But once you start storing up too much, you're actually taking away from others, specifically when it's cash in the bank. And you shouldn't have to feel guilty over that. But understand that how much is sufficient? When is enough enough? Is more money going to make you happy? No, it's not. It's what you do with that money that makes you happy. And if that money is just sitting in a bank account, it ain't doing jack for you. It's not making you happy. It's doing nothing. Money by itself is useless. It's what you buy with it. It's what you do with it that is the important part. Making yourself happy in buying and taking care of the things that you care about. If I ever have enough money, I will use it to take care of my friends, my family. That's what I would do. I would spend just enough on me to make me happy, to make sure that I am settled for the rest of my life. And then I'm going to do that for my friends and family as much as I can. That's just what I think everybody should do. Is just being sufficient. We're being told all of this stuff that we should have, all of this crap that we should buy, we should do with our lives. If you're not traveling the world once a decade or something, you're not living. Bullshit. There are some very fine people in this world that have made history and never really left their region. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't understand. You are the one that can mark what is what you want to do. You are the one to mark your success. You are the one that you're able to go, yes, now I've succeeded. This is what I've done, not by somebody else's metric. I would say that I've lived a very successful life because I don't measure success in money. And sure, yeah, that's a broke boy, measurement. I've been broke most of my life. But I can still say I've succeeded. I raised 2 great kids. I've helped more people than I can probably count. And a lot of them, I don't even remember their names. I've done what I can with my life and my means without really harming myself in the process, so I can keep helping others. And I watch these rich people scream and cry about others, about doing, charity work and all of that. And I will remind people again that charities, for every dollar you give, a nickel on average goes to the charity, goes to the actual thing you're trying to fund, a nickel. Now, I don't know if that's still a statistic, but I'm sure it really hasn't got better with inflation. And I mean, with all these charity scandals I've seen, I don't trust any charity. If I give money to somebody, it's going to be quietly. It's going to be in a very private means, and it's going to be directly. And I don't mean directly by, I'm going to, be right there and put it in their hand. But they might find that bills get paid. They might find that, the property they were paying for is now paid for, depending on how much money I have and how much pull I can do. Or they might find out that they have a bank account and that they're a writer on that, certain amount of money gets put in every month. And that's just extra money for them. They can use it however they want. The reason why I specify that rather than just making a bank account in their name is because then they would have to count it as income. But as long as it's still in my name, they don't. It's just a discretionary allowance. It's money I give them for whatever they want because I'm already paying the taxes on it. At least I've heard that that's a way to get around people and taxes. But the other thing is that if I do happen to suddenly die, that bank account's still in their name. They can still use that bank account because they would be the beneficiary of that bank account. Once I pass, whatever's still in it goes to them, or whatever's still being paid out through whatever trusts I may have set up still goes to them. You know, and it's just basically a money that they can use for the rest of their life, as far as I'm concerned, because that's what I wanted for them. That's my will, you know, is to set that up, not in a trust, so to speak, like with conditions on it, like you have to do a certain thing. It's like, no. I found that, you know, trust can be very abused. But if you give somebody a certain amount of money a month, and it probably wouldn't be enough to, you know, life-changing amounts, but if I can take care of the majority of their bills, I mean, that means they still learn to live within their means, even if that money suddenly gets cut off. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about winning the lottery or winning a windfall, is suddenly they start living outside of their means and don't realize that at any point that money can be taken away, or that money will run out. Because once we hit, like, you know, a few $1 million, you know, people don't really understand how much that's worth. And so learning to be sufficient with what you have is more important than trying to dream big and get things that you really don't need. You can. Yes, you can. As long as you do it smartly. You might, I mean, I'm not saying that you'll be able to win the Powerball, but you can plan a retirement around playing Powerball. I know you're kidding, but if you win the Powerball, take the payments, don't take the lump sum. I'm just going to tell you that right now, because the statistics on somebody taking the payments versus taking the lump sum, most people live longer if they take the payments. Yeah, you missed, you know, in Ghost Stream, you missed some funny, freaky stuff. It was hilarious. I mean, Ghost was twerking all over the place, man. Raven painted his toenails for him. All of that. It was funny. I mean, I can't even describe what was going on. Oh, yeah, man. On a game called Human Fall Flat. It was hilarious. But, and I know it's easy to sit there and talk about, yeah, it does look like a fun game. You know, saying that, oh, money's not going to make you happy. Heck. True. That would probably be valid. But basically what I'm trying to say is figure out what makes you happy. Chase that happiness. True. It's easy for somebody to say, who has has a reasonable amount of money, versus somebody that doesn't have any amount of money or any, you know, a job right now. You know, don't get me wrong, I understand that. But I've been where you are. I mean, I was homeless with 2 kids. I mean, and I'm pretty sure you by now you realize that me and my dad did not have a very good relationship. And I had to move back in with my dad and my stepmom. that was not a happy time, but we made it through it out the other side. Luckily we didn't have to stay there for very long. I think it was only like 3 or 4 months. But we made it. It was really close one night. I'll tell you that right now. I could handle him screaming and yelling at me. When he started screaming and yelling at my wife because she was trying to defend me because he was screaming and yelling at me, yeah, I almost caught a case, but my family was riding on it. So I sucked it up. We talked it out, moved on. And it was shortly after that we moved out. We saved, we really, right. Yeah, he did. And I explained to my wife why I told her, why don't you leave the room and I will handle this? Because my dad was known to be violent with women. And if he laid a hand on her, I probably would be in prison right now. Because there was no way he could stand up to me, especially at that time in my life, let alone his life. So, and also I think my wife may have been right there next to me because she probably would have tore him apart. Because my wife and I sparred a lot back in the day. We actually stopped because she went to kick me. We were sparring. She went to kick me and I went to block and she broke her toe. I have never been accused so many times of being a spousal abuser. And the nurses and doctors kept asking my wife, is this spouse abuse? And I looked at him and said, look, I'll leave the room if you don't think you're getting a proper answer to this. She finally looked at the doctor and nurses and said, look, I'm the one that fucking kicked him. That's how I broke my toe. I kicked him. We sparred. Because they could tell it was a fighting injury the way it happened. The way that the injury broke. Yeah, you're right. It was a fighting injury, but we sparred. This was friendly stuff we'd been doing since we were dating. This was 10 years of sparring. And we finally had to stop because, if you sparred with anybody any length of time, you get to know, and so you have to step it up. You have to step it up. Yeah, pretty much. The fact that it even tried to censor the symbols, rando. Yeah, come on. I hate how the moderation software cannot figure out what's being malicious versus what's just being, said. Like, my God. And I know it's because people have broken it and all of that, blah, blah, blah. But really? So, yeah, I have no doubts that my wife could have taken care of him. Oh, wasn't it? No. Don't aim for my buns because I don't have any ass at all. You're going to hit straight hip bone. No, she didn't kick me in the ass. She went to kick me in the calf, in the thigh. And I just moved my knee and she kicked the side of my knee, breaking her toe. It was just a little twitch to block. And I knew as soon as I did it, and I wasn't sure which one of us hurt. Which one of us I felt the toe break. But I wasn't sure if it was something in my knee that broke or if it was something on her that broke. So I dropped to the ground too and waited for the pain. It's like, okay, it didn't happen to me, so it happened to her. And, then we went to the hospital. Had my friends, watch the 2 kids. But yeah, it's been a long time. We stopped sparring a long time ago. But I will tell you, nothing made me happier, or nothing changed my level of happiness as much as cutting off TV, of taking control over what I watch. You know, like, I mean, yeah, I watch YouTube. I watch, well, sometimes watch Netflix. I don't even have a subscription right now. I have Amazon Prime, but half the time I forget about it. I use Prime, the Prime for other things. Good job, gossip. And by Prime, I mean it saves me money on shipping costs. It's worth the price that I pay each year, because I do it yearly. I will tell you, that is one thing that helps me out so much. You want to set up your life to be very chill and very relaxed once you start getting a reasonable income tax return. Here's something about being oh, that's funny. I mentioned Prime, and the bot had the first word in there was Prime. Prime Val Nutter. Yeah, sure. But anyway, paying for things by the year. You set it up for around tax time for all of that stuff to come out. Sure, you don't really have a tax return, but you don't have to pay all of these incidental bills. Like, I go through Mint Mobile so I can pay for my phone bill once a year. Most of the stuff I pay for is once a year that's discretionary. Like Prime, like my cell phone, like YouTube Premium, like my Suno subscription. I pay for that once a year. One, you save a lot more money on the per year basis if you time it properly. I would always suggest paying for things by year if you are subscribing, just because it takes a lot of stress off of you, and generally it's a 10 to 20% reduction in the price. And you're also shielded from a lot of their changes. Like, you might get extended out a certain amount of time. Like, if they add ads to your tier, it might get extended out to the life of your contract, that you don't get ads. Now, once you re-up, then the ads would start. Like when Netflix started it, when I think Netflix is starting it. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. I don't pay that much attention, but I would say that if that is any advice I can give you in the subscriber level world that we're in, pay by year if you can. Plan it around your tax time. Don't go whole hog, but plan out, your tax return is what pays for your yearly subscriptions. Boom, done. You don't have to worry about it. Or, if you think you're not going to get enough, you have plenty of time to save up for it. Just throw it in a savings account, which can make you a decent amount of money, for the time. And a lot of times, like, I don't know, I think I pay 120, 125 for my Prime. I pay 130, 140 for my cell phone per year. It might be more than that. My wife takes care of that one. I'm just on her plan. So I might, mine just renews. I don't really pay attention, as bad as that might be. I pay attention to stuff. Pay attention to where you get the best price break. And I don't mean like the one they tell you. 120, 125 per year, something like that. I mean, if they extended it, if they increased the price, and I save on, I don't know how much for. Okay, well, yeah. I also lived in I lived in Seattle, around Seattle at that time. So different states have different prices. And student discount. Yeah, there you go. Student discount. You got knocked $50 off. But you see what I mean? By paying it by year, you can save a lot of money. Especially if you time it properly, that you renew your subscription right before you leave school. So at least that last year you get the student discount for the last year. Yeah, when I was in college, man, I was so mad that I lost out on all of those friggin' discounts. Because I used to have I was able to buy whatever year of office that was, like one of the last years of office at a student discount. Plus, I had just built a computer and I needed, Windows to put on it. Which if I ever build a computer myself again, I'm not putting Windows on, I'm putting Linux. And that's a message for all of you computer builders out there. Don't put on OEM, automatically put on Microsoft. Ask the customer what they want. Give them options. Quit bowing to Microsoft and putting everything on. Like, this is pissing me off that I don't know which version of Linux to be good. And I trust computer builders, maybe stupidly, to a certain degree. I know when I build my computers, there's certain things that I trust. Now, if they started offering, a certain version of Linux, and I know there's so many different versions out there, but I would probably trust that it'd be decent. And there's basically Window clone out there. There used to be Lindos, but Windows sue them to oblivion. I think you can still find Lindos, but don't quote me on it. But I wouldn't. I'm just saying that I'm getting tired of only being offered, because I'm on a PC, only being offered Windows. Like, if I buy a pre-built computer, that's it. That's all I get. Hell, sometimes when I buy parts, like if I buy a new not hard drive, buy a new CPU chip, you can get it bundled with Windows. Well, why don't you bundle it with something else too? Like, give me options. I know that, because I'm Twitch streaming now, Linux would be a stupid thing to switch to, because nothing uses Linux. And I think they do that on purpose. Most video games don't make it for Linux. Most of your streaming software doesn't work with Linux. Maybe it does now, but it didn't used to. I know OBS works with Linux though. So, I could still do some things, but it's again, going back to those options things. And I think we need to realize how many things we can do to make our lives better. Paying by year, not by month. Or even if you can't afford a whole year, 3 to 6 months, it gives you wiggle room, gives you time. Yes, probably a good idea. Like I was saying, we need to learn what's good for us. Oh, what you pondering? Anything special? Out of curiosity. Okay, now I'm going to say something that's probably super controversial. Michelin stars are worthless. I have had some really expensive food that I didn't like, that I thought homemade was better. So I get, but what's the point in elevating a PB&J? Like, it's like all of the elevated grilled cheese sandwiches. Like, really? It has to be on this bread. It has to do this. You have to use this kind of butter. You have to do this, Sometimes I just want a stupid cheddar cheese, grilled cheese. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to talk bad about it, but when Michelin stars, it doesn't make sense to me. like all of this grand food. Yeah, see, I mean, isn't that just PB&J? You use two different words, it's like, I mean, you use a grape reduction, it's like, sure, it's still going to be pretty good, but is it worth all the extra effort to make it that much better? I mean, Tater Tot tried doing certain. Why? Hi, Jade. Right. I mean, a Michelin star worthy meal. Like I went to that steakhouse. That steakhouse is really good. Did it have a Michelin star? Probably not. And a lot of people like try to tell you, oh, well, you just don't get it. You have to have these proper ingredients. You have to have this. What's good food? What good is food if you can't make it at home? I mean, like most of your French dishes have to be modified because you literally can't make it like the French make it because it has to do with elevation. That's another thing people forget to mention is that your elevation, the density of the air changes the flavor of a food. Trust me, I know. I've been to many different elevations and had the same food, and it's not the same thing. Right? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me to sit here like food is food. Like if you enjoy making good food, that's fine. Like if you go into that and you do all of those preparations and you do all of that and it's worth it to you, that's fine. But the fact that we have pushed more, and this was something that I just cannot stand, forgive me, that we push presentation over taste. We push more about how a food looks than how it tastes. So a $10,000 cone of ice cream because it's gold foiled. Let me tell you something. You can't taste gold. It's non-reactive. Gold does nothing for a food other than presentation. In fact, it'll reduce the flavor of the food because it's non-reactive. So as you're chewing on the gold, you're actually losing taste from the food. Right? See, and that would be fine, but that's a bistro-worthy homemade PB&J. Do not get me wrong. Nah. Gold is non-reactive. Again, it's not going to make you harf. Your body just really doesn't do anything with it. You're going to have sparkly poops. You're going to shit glitter. That's what you're going to do. I mean, I think Jade can attest to this, when her daughter was making a cake and she's like, well, it doesn't look like I want it. Is it going to mess with the flavor? No, then who cares? Too much Goldschlager. Goldschlager. Man, did I get way too drunk on that when I was a kid. Well, when I was younger, in my 20s. I didn't really drink much before I was 21. I did go out to bars, but I was a designated driver and made quite a healthy sum off the drunk. Stopping at every gas station saying, okay, it's time to fill up. Everybody give me 5. I make $20 a stop, and it's only like 2 miles to their place. But there was 5 gas stations. They always just thought they spent it on beer. I know, that was mean. I that wasn't very nice of me. I cannot take credit for it. I got it from a comedian. I tried to see if it would work, and it did. I can't remember what comedian. It may have been Dennis Leary. May have been. But when it comes to food, I mean, like, I'm just going to completely segue because I have a few thoughts on food. I didn't get this body by not appreciating food. The fact is that Food Network ruined food, ruined home cooks. it did a lot for helping them, and then it went off the rails. People, oh, it's a deconstructed ham sandwich. You literally made, sliced up ham. You know what I mean? It's just like, or the wedge salad. So I'm paying more because you didn't want to cut the lettuce for me. You just cut it in a wedge and said, here's your salad. Screw that. Give me a normal I didn't know what a wedge salad was, and it came with a meal at one point, and they bring it to me, and I'm looking at this, and it's like, it's uncut lettuce. What are you doing? How is this a salad? A salad requires more than lettuce. Where's the tomato? Where's the extra stuff that goes with it? It's like, no, they put dressing on a chunk of iceberg or whatever it was. And it was just like so ridiculous to me. And it bothers me when we put more over presentation than taste. I watched, I don't know how many different Cooking Network shows because of Tater. And some of them were fun. Like I liked Cutthroat Kitchen, I think is what it was. That one was fun to watch, the challenges and the just that stuff that they would do. It's fun. I mean, yeah, and I know most of it's rigged anyway, but who cares? That's reality TV. That's most competitions. They're rigged. They have to keep their ratings up because you can't have the one that everybody hates win. But you have to have that one that everybody hates get too far. It's just they rig it so many different ways. And I would just cringe every time the judges would judge the food. And it's just like, you're literally judging this on things you don't like. Not on, did the meal represent what it was supposed to be? That's one of the things that just kills me when you can hear the judges judging on their own personal tastes. I'm sorry, are you a food critic? Because a food critic doesn't judge it on their personal taste. I mean, if they did, food critics would be boring to listen to. They wouldn't be worth listening to. If you're telling me, oh, well, I don't like spicy food, so I'm going to knock you down because you made this a little spicy. That's a personal taste. Now, did they make it so spicy you couldn't handle it or couldn't eat it? Well, that's a different matter. I've made that mistake. But when it's about personal taste and you're a judge, now I know you're rigging the vote. Because food critics don't judge on personal taste. They judge on the criteria. Does the food represent what it is supposed to be? Does it taste the way it's supposed to be? And how well was everything prepared? And lastly is presentation, or it should be. Because I don't care, man. If you've ever seen a chipped beef open face sandwich, it looks like shit on a shingle, like what most people learn to call it. It's literally chipped beef on a toasted piece of bread with gravy on it. It's shit on a shingle. But it's good. But it looks like crap. So, what do? Like, I love banquet pot pies. Yeah, SOS. The bargain basement, I think you can still buy like 2 for $1 or whatever. They are terrible for me. They tear me up, but I still love them. They're so good. And they literally taste best when just microwaved. Like, not even cooked in an oven like you can do, but microwaved is when they're just quick snack that's really good. And yeah, you're telling me one of those is a meal? My ass. That's a snack. Of course, I'm also a big dude, so, But we all have our trash food that we like. These guilty pleasures that we eat that we're not, that we don't really fess up to eating. And it's like, I mean, no, seriously, I love eating, banquet pot pies. Green Jeans started at this time, but I won't blame it. I haven't had the breakfast pot pie one. I didn't know they made one. I got to go look that out now. Because I mean, I love trash food. I mean, come on, who doesn't love trash food? As long as I don't go too whole hog on it, I'm okay. I mean, every once in a while, like once every 2 or 3 months, I put on the shopping list banquet pot pies. My wife knows to get like 8 of them because we'll chow through like 2 of them in a meal. And I like to have a few later. Oh. Oh yeah, you need to go to sleep. Thank you for popping in, XO. You have a good night. I enjoyed chatting at you and partially with you. Don't worry, it does get better after time. And yes, sleep well. But when it comes down to, presentation over taste, that is a line, that is a hill I'll die on. I have eaten some things that looked terrible. Like it just looked bad. But man, was it good. And I've made most of those. So maybe I might be a little biased on the presentation, the taste over presentation. But I feel that it is something that people hit too hard on. And I was like, oh, that doesn't look appetizing. Take a taste. Like, did you grow up in a family where, your mom was literally displaying food before, you even got a chance to eat it? Come on. I mean, that's like, come on. Really? Food's food. You got to learn to enjoy it. You got to learn to enjoy it and not have to work. And I think that's the other thing is just the work people put into to elevate it that extra little notch, which isn't really worth it. Have to get the Himalayan sea salt rather than regular sea salt. Little secret, you know what makes Himalayan sea salt pink? Iron. That's it. And most of the time it's not Himalayan sea salt or Himalayan salt. Most of the time you're just getting salt with added iron. And they call it pink salt, Himalayan salt. Because you ever look at the Himalayas? Imagine trying to mine the salt from the dried seabeds that are up there somewhere or in the rocks and mountains. You're like, no, you're not getting real Himalayan salt. It's got the same formula. I almost guarantee you they do what their best to get it as closely as possible. But these like super ingredients, like I saw blackened salt at one point. What'd you do? Throw charcoal in with your salt? Like, what is that even doing? You're adding a little bit of a dark flavor to it. Okay. So you burnt the food and you still get that flavor. And I do understand certain numbers of it because I remember growing up and McDonald's had the Shamrock shakes and they were green and everybody just assumed they had a subtle mint flavor. Apparently it's always been vanilla up until recently. They actually started adding mint, supposedly. I don't really know. I haven't had one in I don't know how long, but does color have that much of an effect? And I'll say, yeah, color has that much of an effect. Right. Black Caribbean salt. What makes it black? You know, and why is it Caribbean? Like, is it salt you can only get from the Caribbean? Maybe. Supposedly. You know, I mean, sure, it looks cool. Don't get me wrong. Okay. But see, that's what I'm saying is that how much of an effect does it offer versus the price? You know what I mean? Like, how far are you willing to go for that? So, what is so special about black salt? Lower sodium content when compared with white salt. That's it. Lower sodium content. That's the difference between black salt and regular white salt. So you're actually getting less salt. Like, because that's what gives salt its flavor is the sodium, you know, the sodium tang. So you're paying more for less salt. Seems kind of strange to me. Although I'm sure the Caribbean salt probably has different seasonings with it. So, you know, you're adding a little bit of seasoning to the salt itself. Which, I mean, that's fine. Like, don't get me wrong. But I don't know. It seems strange to me to go through all this effort. You know, and like I said, I've had some high-end dishes that I didn't have to pay for. You know, there are certain things that I will tell you are better, you know, that it's worth going for. Toasted sesame seeds versus regular sesame seeds. If you're buying them, always get toasted. Toasted is better. But of course, anything toasted is better in my personal opinion. You know, if I could figure out how to toast a cake and then ice it, and I don't mean just bake it, I mean like toast it so it gets a little bit of that crust. Yeah, I'd probably do it. But you're also going to ruin the flavor. But I like that little extra crunch, which is probably why I prefer pies, because they come with a crust and, you know, little crunch. I like crunchy foods. Maybe it's a texture thing, maybe not. You know, this is all just my personal flavor. You know, I also have high-end tastes. I love some really expensive foods. You know, I've had high-end calamari. So good. You know, if it chews like rubber, it's not good. It should snap, not bounce. That's the problem. Most people have had bad dishes, you know, and most of the dishes, I mean, there are certain things that I don't like and I'll probably never have again. But there are other things that it's totally worth it. It's totally worth going for. Like high-end sushi restaurant, absolutely worth paying the price for. I can't describe to you why it is so different, but there is just a certain elevation to high-end sushi versus just going and getting sushi. Maybe that's changed, but I haven't afforded high-end sushi ever. The meal I did have that I spent $250 on, I didn't spend $250 on. It was free to me, but my receipt would have been $250 just for me. Because when it comes to sushi, I can eat a ton of it. I think I sampled one of every log they had on the menu, other than like the California roll and stuff that aren't real sushi. I mean, and that was including sashimi, that was including tempura. You know, I had all of that. And 3 different kinds of, sushi. I like sushi. I prefer sashimi. I don't think they had poke bowls. Those came later into popularity. This was specifically just the different logs. You know, from Firecracker, Dragon, you know, I had all, you know, a lot of them. I didn't have all of them because there was some that had cucumber on it, and I can't do cucumber. But the rest I did a lot of, and I really enjoyed it. But sashimi, good sashimi is worth everything. I wish I could remember what kinds we had, but I mean, obviously it was tuna fish. And it was worth it. It was totally worth it. Dredge that in wasabi. I know the truth about Goku's son Gohan. Bro, I don't know DB Dragon Ball at all. We've talked about this. Oh, okay. You know, okay, I might be a little bit of a snob there, but $7 sushi seems a bit sus. But if it's good, it's good. And it's also HEB, and I haven't been disappointed in the quality yet. So, I mean, I didn't know there was a $7 sushi Wednesday. Or, you know, I generally have fish on Wednesdays. Like tonight I made fish fillets, salad, but I also added these kind of tater tots to them because I love tater tots. Okay. But they're like cauliflower and pea protein added to potatoes so that, you know, it reduces what it's going to mess with my wife. $7 poke. Yeah. I'd have to try that. I'd have to try a Pokeball. Because I just don't think that was common. I mean, I've had Italian pizza, like really. And okay, that's funny. Gohan means cooked rice or simply meal. You know, that actually kind of makes sense. I mean, it's funny, but it makes sense too. I don't know. It's weird sometimes. Really? No, I didn't know that. I did not know that at all. Although that explains a lot. I mean, I know one of them's named like Pickle or something like that, or Piccolo or whatever. I don't know what vegetable Vegeta would be other than just vegetable. I don't know. Maybe that's why a lot of people got into, you know, Dragon Ball then. I never got into Dragon Ball. I tried several times and it was always in the middle of a fight arc, which apparently is most of it. So I didn't care because it took forever to get to any kind of story. Just my take on it. I like a lot of things that people are like looking at me like, really? You know, I have strange movie tastes. Like I liked Wanted, you know, Bend the Bullet or Curve the Bullet. I don't know. It was just fun. You know, I mean, of course, it's a ridiculous concept. Right? It's an old Angelina Jolie movie. I can't remember the other actor in it, but it was basically about super assassins that could curve bullets and predict where bullets were going to go. Yeah. Yeah, Wanted. I loved that movie. I mean, it was stupid fun. You turn your brain off and you watch it. You don't expect, you know, realistic physics. I mean, like a 3-stage bullet, like they showed you at the beginning and at the end. It's like that's not how they work. But I mean, great concept. Cool. But that's what I liked about it is that they took a reasonable concept and had fun with it. And that these guys would like perform superhuman feats, but not like Superman's level superhuman feats. And I think that's what they forget is that there's a lot of movies today forget the simple tricks to get people in, you know, like they will turn their brain off for simple things, for simple tricks. You know, they'll enjoy. I mean, why do you think Rambo was so friggin' power? Right. Well, it really depends on also how the movie's marketed. It's why I can't watch Marvel anymore, not just because I'm a comic book fan, but I mean, I can't suspend my disbelief anymore than I already have with some of these characters. Like, it doesn't make sense. You're having them do things that they shouldn't. Like, in character, they shouldn't be doing this. You're having them do it because they did it in the comic books, but you forgot about all of this other stuff. I'm not even trying to judge them on a higher level because, I mean, I really liked Superman. I liked the new Superman. It was great. I don't understand why people keep saying, oh, it was an ensemble movie. I think the other Justice Gangers were in there like, what, 10, 15 minutes other than Mr. Terrific? Like, they weren't even in it that long, but people are like really hammering that there was other heroes in the world. Like, how are you adjusting to these things? You know, you're throwing it out there because you want it to be bad. You know, everybody wants Henry Cavill's Superman, you know, the Schneider cut to last forever. I'm sorry, it was bad. Oh, yeah, exactly. Everybody like, oh, crypto. It's like, you know, they brought in the dog. And it's like, yeah, they did. And it even makes more sense to me now why that whole where's the dog scene, because it wasn't even his dog. He was looking after it for his cousin. So it was even more so a responsibility to find the dog and take care of this thing that was put into his care. You know, oh, Superman was getting his ass kicked, you know, through most of the movie. Of course he was. It was a culmination of a 3-year plan by Lex Luthor. Are you stupid? Like, are you not paying attention to the plot? You know, this is a culmination of a 3-year plan to try and take out Superman. Was there some characterizations in there that I thought were a little goofy? Yeah. But it wasn't enough for me to go, oh, movie is bad. It was enough for me to go, I kind of wish they hadn't have, you know, had him like roll over and say, oh, I'm doing something, and then roll back over and do nothing. You know, that's what bothered me. That was the only scene I can think of that actually bothered me. Everything else I thought was great. You know, but I can't say the same for any Marvel. Like, looking at Fantastic Four, I can't get over, well, Pedro Pascal as Mr. Fantastic. I'm sorry. He's not Mr. Fantastic. It's the Mark Ruffalo treatment. You know, Pedro Pascal can't pull off an intimidating, intelligent person. Okay, Loki, I'll give you. Loki makes sense. He's all over the board and it's a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna question anybody's love for Loki. But I mean, just even looking at the Thor movies and how hit and miss they are. Thor 1, great. Thor 2, meh. Thor 3, great. Thor 4, eh. Sorry. Thor Dark World was bleh. I don't even remember it. I know I watched it. I don't even really remember it. I just didn't care. Ragnarok, wonderful movie. Loved it. It's still one that I would watch again. It was a lot of fun. Love and Thunder, didn't even want to watch it. Like, nope. I saw the previews for it. I saw that they brought in friggin', yeah, 3 is absolute favorite. Absolute. But I saw that they brought in, and I hate, because I really like Christian Bale as an actor. I hate that they brought him to play the God Killer. I can't remember his name at the moment. And he was wasted on that movie. And I think that the guy that did the director that did Ragnarok got lucky. Taika Waititi is how I could be pronouncing his name wrong, but they did a decent job. They did a great job with Ragnarok, but I think that had more to do with the cast. See, and I really liked Hulk in Ragnarok because I got so much less of Ruffalo, because I can't stand Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner. You know, he's too puppy dog. He can't play an intimidating, intelligent person. It's the same problem with Pedro Pascal. He can't play an intimidating, intelligent person. He just doesn't do it well. Everything I've ever seen him in, it just didn't work. And there were better actors to put in that role. I also just don't understand how Pedro Pascal went from a relative nobody to being in, what was it, 6 movies this year alone? Or in the last 2 years or something like that? Like, I mean, it's just like, or projects or whatever it was. I mean, like, my God, why is this dude everywhere? Why is he taking all of these big roles? Like, there are so many other people that could play the roles. You know, I don't care even that they gender swapped Silver Surfer. What I care is they use the actress that they used. Girlfriend? Pedro Pascal has a girlfriend? I don't know. Maybe. Or boyfriend. I don't know. I don't know which way he swings. I don't really pay attention to their personal lives. I mean, I literally stepped back. I don't want to pay attention to movie stars' personal lives. I don't care anymore. Like, one, I don't want to know what their political beliefs are. They're an entertainer. Just entertain me. You're literally there to entertain me. It's just like my job. I'm here to entertain you guys. Right. Exactly. Bruce Banner is literally an abused child who created this creature, the Hulk, to protect his psyche when he was being abused as a child. I mean, incomplete with being experimented on. Because his dad, David Banner, was also kind of a dick. But he was also relatively intelligent. That's why Hulk is Hulk. You know, Bruce Banner literally suffers from dissociative identity disorder. You know, this is a personality within him because he used it to protect his psyche. Well, then when the gamma bomb happened, he was able to, he breaks out into this character, you know, the rage. You know, it's when Bruce is in danger that Hulk comes out. Magic Mark show? No. No. Yes, Jekyll and Hyde. Yes. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about, Nine Tails, which is exactly why I said no. That is not all right, all right, all right. Yes, Hulk was able to see ghosts, but Bruce could not. Yeah, I thought I'd get you with that one. You know, there's a lot of differences. I mean, and yes, there is so much lore that has been added in the last 20 years since I paid attention. You know, that Hulk is something else, was always going to be gamma mutates are always going to be attached to the one below all and all of this crap, like, I don't know. I'm sure that, the Immortal Hulk run was a really good run from what I understand, but I don't like the idea of them showing Hulk as being evil. That's not what Hulk's ever been. And yeah, I know he was taken over by an evil and, incarnate person, but I just have a hard time with Hulk's been unpredictable. He's been rage, but he's never been evil. I mean, any of y'all know Hulk's major weakness that always works? You know how you can stop Hulk in his tracks, or at least it used to? Any of you know? And I'm not talking about Betty Ross. Not even necessarily children. But yeah, he won't hurt children. Puppies. No, puppies. Because of Bruce Banner's fixation of wanting to have a dog when he was a child. Which tells me that they really missed out on an opportunity of a crossover with the Inhumans and Hulk, and using Lockjaw, who's a big puppy. Also they forget that Hulk has animal magnetism to a certain degree. Animals trust Hulk. Or at least they used to. He could go out into the woods and sit, and animals would come around him and that would help calm him down, and then he would become Bruce. Yeah. Other than what's the first thing they did? They cut off Medusa's hair. I'm absolutely baffled on how they did that, because her hair is supposed to be indestructible. Like, it absolutely baffles me. Like, Inhumans could have been such a good story, but my God, you could tell where they filmed it for the movie and where they filmed it for the TV show, and then they tried to blend the two. What half-ass bullshittery was that? Like, you're freaking Disney and you're trying to, shave friggin' points off the budget? Like, that doesn't make any sense. You had such a great... I mean, one, they ruined the Inhumans on what they could have been. And even in the comic books, they have never treated the Inhumans properly. Like, the Inhumans are supposed to be the counterpoint to the X-Men, to mutants. Like, they're supposed to be, point and counterpoint. Isolated, distrusted. They were supposed to be the counterbalance. In fact, if I remember right, the Inhumans actually predate the X-Men or mutants in general. And it was because the rights were in flux that the X-Men were created to begin with, because they couldn't necessarily use the Inhumans anymore. So they came up with mutants. Which is why you have a little overlap, because if the Inhumans' home is supposed to be on the moon, and then you had this big battle with the Beyonder and Dark Phoenix, or not Beyonder, Watcher on the moon, how did these two not, like, overlap? Like, they were, they were supposed to overlap at some point. Oh, God, yeah. Morbius could have been good. I mean, especially since it could have been a great jumping off point for Blade. But, oh, wait, Morbius was Sony and Blade is still under Disney. The problem is that I really hope they're just doing a reboot with Doomsday, with Avengers Doomsday, because I might start watching again if they do a big reboot. Oh yeah. Midnight Suns. Oh my God. Hannibal. You know, there's so many. I mean, and what they did to Moon Knight. Oh my God. Moon Knight. Moon Knight should have been done in the same kind of style as Daredevil on Netflix. You know, more of a street level superhero with multiple personality disorder. And you're supposed to always question whether or not he has powers or if it's just his belief that he has powers, that he gets up and walks away from some of this stuff. I mean, Moon Knight in the comics, like there's literally a famous like meme about Moon Knight. You know, I know you're here, Dracula, you son of a bitch. Where's my money? That's actually a panel from the comics. It's not even a meme. That's actually a panel from the comics. Moon Knight literally is one of the craziest SOBs, and he is literally meant to be a counter to Batman, like the exact opposite. You know, Moon Knight wears white because he wants criminals to see him coming. He's crazy, you know, and he knows it, and he's okay with it. I mean, Mark Spector is one of the best created characters, I think, ever. You know, Moon Knight, Mark Spector, you know, just how they did that. It was so well done. And then over the time, you know, yes, he's talked to Khonshu forever, or Khonshu, however you're supposed to pronounce it. But he never got a response until later on in the comics. Like, he never really talked to the god. The god never talked back to him, other than in what could be seen as delusions. But now they've given him all sorts of powers. Like, I guess he could control. Well, I guess Khonshu could control Mjolnir because Mjolnir's made from moon metal. Like, it was so confusing. Like, I've tried to keep up, but I mean, it doesn't make sense. But yeah, Midnight Suns should have been a. Yeah, I mean, Taskmaster. Okay, so the reason why, and this is something that I think a lot of people don't understand, Taskmaster mimics your moves. Like, he figures out how your moves work, and he will find the best way to counter you. The problem when fighting Moon Knight is Moon Knight does not do defensive actions. He does not defend himself. He is a berserker. So Taskmaster can't counter him in the same way he would counter somebody else. And so he gets his ass kicked every time, because when you push Moon Knight to a certain degree, he goes berserk and stops caring about his own health. And so since Moon Knight's not going to block, Taskmaster can't block in the same way. I mean, it's hard to explain, but basically, because there's no way to mimic, he's just sitting there getting his butt handed to him, and Taskmaster can't stand up to Moon Knight's ability to dish out damage. You know, Deadpool and Moon Knight fought, and it was stupid ridiculous because they both just don't care. It's just, once you realize that Moon Knight's just there to be a nice guy, you know, he's trying to win for the good guys. Now, often he's deluded, but he's trying to win for the good guys. I don't know. It's just, there was a lot of potential with the Marvel Comics movies, but I think that the bigger problem is that they forgot that most of the time comics work with an individual storyline. I mean, even Avengers storylines, you know, you don't always have the big four there in Avengers comics. You know, you have the lower levels, you know, doing these things. You know, that's what you do to keep up with it. I mean, Avengers really should have been a TV show with an occasional movie where the heavy hitters have to be brought in. You know, Thor, his storyline, I mean, that's why the Thor movies worked so well, is that mostly he stuck to himself. There wasn't really much crossover with the greater universe. But Captain America, he had a shit ton of crossover with the rest of the universe. Iron Man had a bunch of crossover with the rest of the universe, even though that was even more discreet. And then now, you have to do a butt ton of homework watching all these other movies and stuff to even understand what the next movie and the sequel is, even though you've watched the other two. But this third movie, now you have like 3 TV shows and a whole nother movie in between to figure out what's happening in number 3 of this movie franchise you've been watching. They really should have treated them as individual franchises with occasional crossover in an Avengers movie every 5 years, where you might have little pieces in each of their little movies of the bigger storyline being seen, but you're not really paying attention to that. You're paying attention to the singular storyline. It's how comic books have worked for 50 plus years. I don't understand how the owners of said comic book don't understand how comic books work. Like, how does this not make sense to you? How do you not understand that? I mean, DC is just as bad. DC is just as bad. They forget that these people should have discrete storylines. Spider-Man's pretty good at keeping it mostly discreet from what I understand, but I also haven't watched a bunch of them. I just don't see Tom Holland as Spider-Man. Ever since I saw him in Civil War, it was just like, yes, have a good night, Jade. Sorry if I bored you to sleep. But of course, you're supposed to be going to sleep, so I guess it's fine. Yes, that is exactly why they're hemorrhaging money, is because they forgot. Oh, you've been sick? I'm sorry to hear that. Well, you rest up and get to feeling better. And yeah, that's why Marvel's hemorrhaging money, is because they can't handle a storyline. I honestly think they're using, Chat GPT or AI to come up with the prompts for their stories for their writers to write from. Yeah, probably a good idea. Because I mean, the storylines are so predictable. Like, I mean, who couldn't see that? I mean, and spoiler alert for Fantastic Four First Steps. Who couldn't see that it was going to be Sue Storm that pushed Galactus through the portal? That makes no sense, but anyway. And she'd die in the process, yet her baby, little Franklin Richards, was going to bring her back. Like, seriously. This was so super predictable. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Why this would work. I mean, okay, it makes sense that Sue Storm is one of the most powerful members of the Fantastic Four. But in this stage of where they put it and in the comics, she's not that confident in her own abilities. She hasn't stretched her abilities. And Galactus is a pretty big heavy hitter. It should have, I don't know, taken all 4 of them, because it's a power of teamwork. I mean, Ben Grimm, often gets lowballed in the strength category, but he is actually a pretty heavy hitter. He's traded blows with Hulk. Not an enraged Hulk, but a regular Hulk. The other thing they forget is the more damage Ben takes, the stronger he gets. I mean, especially when, he actually can morph his body, and the more ugly he gets, the stronger he is. Like, the more rocky, pointed, he can become pretty freaking powerful. But also with the, the Fantastic Four is that they're supposed to do everything as a team. And what I could see them doing, what I would have done had I been in the writer's chair, is you have Reed stretch himself out among some kind of, pillars or something, holding Galactus back. You have Sue pushing, maybe using a force bubble to push, to help Reed stay together, push him to, help push him through the portal. But then, you have Ben Grimm and Johnny, Human Torch, be put in a bubble or their own separate bubbles by Sue. I understand, but I'm not a huge Tom Holland fan. I want to like him, but there's just something about him that doesn't make me feel like he is Peter Parker. He honestly feels more like I don't know what other superhero I would make him, but he doesn't feel like he should be a Spider-Man. As much as he does the role justice, as much as he does, I know he has a lot of heart behind it. I know he wants to play the role properly. I know that. But there's just something missing, and I can't explain it. It is more of a feeling, and it is my own personal feeling, and I can't explain it. I wish I could. I wish. But basically, I would have used all four of the Fantastic Four to win the day. And have, maybe they all get sucked through the portal at the same time because they're all working together to try and push the Galactus through. And it's Franklin that brings them back. You still have the same story. You still have the proof that Franklin is Franklin Richards. One of the most powerful mutants ever. He is an Omega level mutant beyond Omega level. He's Omega plus. I wish I could, explain that further, but I mean, he is hands down one of the most powerful people in the Marvel Universe. In fact, he is predicted to become the next Galactus. Now, if you don't understand who Galactus is, he is left over from the universe before our Big Bang. He was actually trapped in a cosmic egg with the Phoenix Force, what became known as the Macron crystal. Like, this is where Phoenix Force, which predates our universe again, and Galactus were changed to being these beings of one of rebirth, one of destruction. They are equally balanced, or supposed to be. Because Galactus, without him, the world stops, he's basically the galactic gardener. He's supposed to prune off the dead branches. Phoenix is supposed to bring new life, and at the end of the universe, this universe, Phoenix comes back to the egg, Galactus comes back, and Franklin Richards is supposed to be there to become the next universes after their Big Bang, Galactus. Like, that's the storyline. That's what the storyline we've always been told. That's how it's supposed to go. That's why Franklin Richards is so powerful. But I don't know what they're doing anymore. I don't know if that's even still the same storyline. And who knows? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I haven't looked. I just know the comics from basically the 10 years I read them, the 90s, which is what they're trying to emulate in most of these comic book movies. They're trying to emulate the 90s, which they're doing a very bad job of. I mean, I don't know why they're not using the newer stories. Like, I mean, really, with DCU, they didn't even have to restart the universe. They could have kept the Snyder universe going if it was going to make money. They could have used the new 52. I mean, DC has always had various universes. You know, that's why they've had so many Crisis on Infinite Earths, 0 Hour, you know, all sorts of continuity reshaping things. You know, I mean, they forget that it's okay to have different interpretations of the same superhero. You know, that's fine, you know, but when you're not making that apparent, you know, when you're making it easy to slide between universes, realities, whatever, you know, the multiverse, you make it useless. You make it annoying. You know, now you just, you know, what does it matter if you kill one character? They can just be brought back from a different universe. That doesn't make, I mean, that's boring. You know, I mean, even Doctor Who basically pointed out that, yeah, there's a multiverse and it's a bitch to try and get to. Like, there's a wall that is really hard to breach. And he did it for Rose. And that was the end of that. He did it for Rose, and that's like literally all he could do. But it is time, apparently, because an ad's going to try and run here shortly. I know it's a little early. Why is it telling me an ad? But anyway, it's about time. I should probably wrap this up. So I'm going to say you all have a good night.